Hey lore lovers, my name's Eric with the Lorebrarians YouTube channel, and today we're taking a closer look at a legendary creature from Zendikar that's long been shrouded in mystery. From its first appearance in the set Worldwake 10 years ago to its latest iteration in the newly released Zendikar Rising, this creature has gathered a beloved following as well as a dangerously powerful reputation at commander tables everywhere. And it is none other than Omnath, the Flickering Heart of Zendikar and Mana Incarnate. This legendary being of near infinite power has been represented in 4 different cards across Magic the Gathering's history, each printing building off the last by the addition of another color of mana. Beginning with the original Zendikar block, Omnath was purely green, but quickly added red mana to its identity with the awakening of the Eldrazi and subsequent battle for Zendikar, becoming a being of pure rage. Continuing to gather power from its surroundings, Omnath pulled blue mana in Core Set 2020 as Locus of the Royal, and then white in Zendikar Rising with its latest printing as the Locus of Creation. But despite its many representations, the myth and history surrounding Omnath is scant, passing on in whispered secrets and buried deep beneath the surface. Today we'll dispel the mysteries of the Flickering Heart and uncover the truth of Omnath's creation and purpose on the plane of Zendikar. Dust off your traveling boots and grab your adventuring packs as we scour the resources to learn all we can on this awe-inspiring and powerful force. Alright, let's dive in. Omnath lacks a central appearance in any of the published stories on Zendikar, and no card directly mentions it. Worse still, since it's such a powerful entity, triggered and activated abilities fill its text box, leaving no room for flavor, which is just demoralizing. Due to this, most of the information presented comes as context clues from other stories and cards of Zendikar, as well as the published guides for the plane and a healthy dose of theory crafting. Regardless, as the heart of a plane, Omnath's story begins at the dawn of time on Zendikar, but we'll begin our journey some several thousand years later with the events of the original Zendikar set. The Eldrazi slumbered in their prison, the Royal was a constant force of nature, and the fabled deity Omnath had never been seen. Most Zendikari, in fact, hadn't heard its name spoken. Those few with knowledge of Omnath saw its name, printed on ancient scrolls and dusty tomes, flicker in and out of the candlelight as they scoured libraries for clues on the ancient past. The core and the merfolk worshipped 3 gods, but these texts spoke of another who came before them, one who gave them life and shape, the god of all creation called Omnath, an entity of pure mana and raw force. But these records were thousands of years old and regarded with skepticism. After all, no being has witnessed this god in eons, if ever. Despite the reluctance of most Zendikari to believe its existence, one location, remote, dangerous, and shrouded in secrecy, bore the god's name, the Prison of Omnath. High atop a mountain plateau in the windswept mesa of the continent of Ondu sat a dense jungle seething with mana. Within this foliage and across a murky swamp existed a mystical binding circle that surrounded the prison. In its center was a fathomless pit that supposedly led to the bowels of the world and location of Omnath's prison. The circle is described as an arrangement of globular swamp growths, hedrons, animal bones, and candles, meant to ward off any who came looking for the prison, as well as maintain the mystical bond that kept Omnath shackled. The legend was too intriguing to resist, and many adventurers made the trek to visit a god's prison, but the eerie sensations surrounding the prison deterred travelers from staying long, and those who strayed too close would be struck by the frequent mana flares that lashed out from the pit, dying in a moment. These were likely struggled grasps at freedom from Omnath. Regardless of what they believed, all Zendikari agreed it was a location shrouded in mystery. Most mysterious of all were the pilgrims and liturgists that twice yearly traveled to the prison to perform a ceremony called the Ritual of Light, in which they surrounded Omnath's prison with 77 candles while reciting prayers and incantations. This wasn't meant to worship a beloved god, but rather reinforce the prison of a malevolent and destructive force. Nothing is known about the pilgrims or when they began their ritual, but it seemed to be an effective means of keeping the Flickering Heart from surging out of its prison. But how did Omnath become imprisoned in the first place, and who is powerful enough to subdue it? The Zendikar Rising set gives us a couple clues to guess at the answers. The Makindi Empire was revealed to have existed thousands of years ago and constructed powerful Skyclaves charged by lithoform engines, a story in its own right that I covered last week. I'll leave a link in the description below. The important takeaway is that Makindi is located on Ondu, the same continent that holds the Prison of Omnath. Further, the lithoform cores the Empire created were strong enough to quell the Royal, the violent storms and general upheaval innate to Zendikar, something necessary for a budding empire to expand and safely develop its civilization. This would earn them the ire of the plane and its god, making them sworn enemies of Omnath and other elementals. Finally, the prison is surrounded by slimy black mounds, which sounds strikingly similar to the black substance that takes shape after a lithoform core is used, seen in the card Lithoform Blight. Perhaps the Makindi used their ancient artifacts to imprison a dangerous threat to their expanding empire. Another theory is that the Planeswalker trio Sorin, Ugin, and Nahiri chained Omnath and used it to aid their attempt at imprisoning the Eldrazi Titans. The Hedron network on Zendikar was fashioned by Nahiri and directed by Ugin to channel mana ley lines seen in the flavor text of Perilous Vault. A ring of Hedrons surrounds the Prison of Omnath. Since Omnath is a being of pure mana, perhaps the trio used it to charge their Hedrons and fuel their spells in order to successfully imprison the Eldrazi, consigning Omnath to the same fate. But again, these are just a couple theories as no hard evidence is presented. Let me know your own theories in the comments. For many centuries, the Ritual of Light held the tenuous bond on Omnath's prison, and the Flickering Heart remained. But it did not stop beating. Across Zendikar, this beating was felt as the Royal, and it was growing more profound. Always a threat to the people of Zendikar, the Royal became more turbulent, elementals became more numerous and aggressive, the land itself became implacable. The words of a merfolk wayfinder named Sarikala paint a vibrant picture. This could be seen as Zendikar fighting desperately in any way it knew how to free Omnath from its chains, for it knew that its ancient enemy, the Eldrazi Titans, were loosening their own and would soon wreak desolation on the plane. At the time of the Worldwake set, the land grew so agitated that a group of elementals arose near the Prison of Omnath and attacked pilgrims as they performed the Ritual of Light. The prayers were silenced, the candles snuffed out, and the chains unshackled. Below, in the belly of the world, Omnath burst from its prison, a god arisen. For centuries, Omnath had been gathering mana, and it gathers still, seen in the abilities of its card. Its flavor text is ominous and prophetic, merely stating that it gathers against the coming storm. The storm being the Eldrazi, which had yet to make an appearance and were mentioned only in Eldrazi Monument and Eye of Ugin. As of Omnath, and by extension Zendikar, could feel the stirrings of the Eldrazi Titans, the elemental prepared itself to save its plane. Zendikar has a deep connection to the Eldrazi. For thousands of years, the alien race had remained entombed beneath its surface, their pestilent aura and desire to feed occasionally lashing out against Zendikar. Although the Titans had been defeated, they weren't destroyed, and their presence became an infection on the plane and its mana. The planar outbursts, sweeping storms, and volcanic activity known as the Royal has many times been attributed to the presence of the Eldrazi, the plane's inflammatory immune response to an alien infection, with Omnath now at the front. But just like an inflammatory response, the plane's rage was general and wide-sweeping, giving credence to the ritualist's fear that an unleashed Omnath would be the destruction of Zendikar. But while the Eldrazi remained, they acted as a focus for Omnath, sparing the lives of the natives. In the ensuing battle for Zendikar, after the Eldrazi's release, Omnath had gathered enough mana and even another color, becoming the red-green Locus of Rage. Its ire towards the Eldrazi grew so powerful that it summoned an army of elementals to dispense the angry will of Zendikar on them. For a time, it could be counted as an ally among the people of the plane. Meanwhile, on Ondu, Omnath left behind a seemingly endless pit that led into the depths of Zendikar. This pit was surrounded by a downward spiraling staircase known as the Soul Stair. With the Prison of Omnath vacant, Ruin Seekers descended the Soul Stair looking for anything that could help them in their battle against the Eldrazi. What they found or how far they journeyed remains unknown. At some point during the battle for Zendikar, or shortly after, Omnath gathered enough mana that it gained access to a third color, this time blue. Its rage shifted and Omnath became the locus of the Royal. This shows us that Omnath is indeed attuned to the Royal and may in fact have some control over its movements or actions. Not surprising for the divine manifestation of Zendikar's will. Green, red, and blue are also the colors of elementals on Zendikar, and Omnath has become their forerunner. The addition of more colors may be symbolic of Zendikar's adaptation to the Eldrazi threat and growth after their subsequent destruction. Which brings us to our most recent printing as the Locus of Creation, gathering even more mana and adding the color white to its identity. But what is Omnath's purpose after the Eldrazi's defeat, and what is in store for the plane and its flickering heart moving forward? Make no mistake, it is an entity capable of atrocities and destruction the ritualists of old feared would befall them upon its release, leveling entire landscapes at a whim. But as its name suggests, Omnath's rage has been greatly quelled in the absence of Eldrazi, and the Elemental, in fact all of Zendikar, is experiencing a period of regrowth and recovery following the devastation it has endured. Zendikar's will is to heal, and so Omnath's drive is that of creation, cauterizing old wounds, rebuilding broken vessels, and once more sending to all of Zendikar the mana-infused lifeblood of its vibrantly beating heart. But Omnath's nature is that of Zendikar. Beautiful at times, but erratic, volatile, and dangerous. Characteristics that put it at odds with the planeswalking core and heir of the ancient Makindi Empire, Nahiri the Lithomancer. Nahiri's possession and use of the powerful Lithoform core, acquired from the ruined Skyclaves to quell the Earth and silence the Royal, is a very real threat to Zendikar. We can see Nahiri using her Lithoform core to suppress tectonic activity in its Spotlight card. But this rash use of incomprehensible power has unforeseen consequences illustrated in the card Lithoform Blight. Each activation of the artifact stops the Royal, but it also unleashes a blight on the land in which corrosive black tendrils eat away and sever the connection to its mana. These lands now produce colorless mana, which parallels how the Eldrazi's feeding transformed mountain peaks, verdant plains, and dense jungles into nothing more than hollow, dust-filled wastes. But the Royal, the Elementals, and the primal mana that flows throughout the plane is integral to Zendikar's identity, something the plane sees worth protecting. Zendikar is no doubt aware of the threat Nahiri poses, and as its will incarnate, Omnath may be seeking out the Lithomancer, or at least the core in her possession, to put an end to its unnatural tampering. This may bring a god to blows with an old planeswalker who once herself held godlike status and most certainly still holds great power. Will the fight over the fate of Zendikar's essence be waged between Nahiri and the plane itself? Or will the planeswalker Nissa, self-stylized as Zendikar's guardian, thwart Nahiri's plan before it comes to fruition? At the time of this recording, the final stories of Zendikar Rising have yet to be published, so only time will tell. Thanks for watching this video on the history and myth surrounding a notorious and beloved legendary creature of Zendikar. Leave a thumbs up if you liked the video and subscribe for weekly content. And now I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on Omnath, your theories on its imprisonment, as well as suggestions for future videos. The references used can be found in the description below. Until next time, go forth and explore the lore.